Good evening, Danville. Alan Shields here, Chief of Police, and we are 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to make people's lives better, and we do that by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. We've got a pretty jam-packed show tonight. We're going to cover the robbery. We covered it last week, but I want to talk about the robbery that happened last week at the ATM. So it wasn't a bank robbery. It was just a robbery that happened at a bank, but it was pretty significant, and it can be pretty traumatizing to be a victim of a robbery. We're going to cover, we're going to kind of cap off. We've been talking about speeding on El Capitan, and I want to kind of cap it off. I want to take it from complaint through data research all the way through enforcement and kind of show you. And it's not an isolated event. It's just a good example of how we handle those complaints. I'm going to give you a college night and tree lighting update, cover some ways that you can engage. And then I'm going to cover 4 updates on 4 separate armed robbery cases, 3 of them kind of similar, but not related in any way. And I just want to kind of wrap that up for all of you. But before we get going, we do have a Fill the Cruiser event. That's this Friday, December 2nd. Friday, December 2nd at 10 to 2. So we're going to have, we'll actually have a U-Haul truck out there. We'll have one of our cop cars out there. And Lindsay Ortiz, our community specialist, will be out there helping to collect toys for tots for that Marine program. And then if you want to engage with us, we actually have a coffee with the cops December 15th at the Starbucks on Camino Ramon. So that is the one over in the Rose Garden Shopping Center. It's the 7:30 Camino Ramon. We'll be there for an hour between 9 and 10. So just come down and join us there. You can ask us questions. If you have any concerns, you can raise them then. And it's just a good chance to be heard and get some information. This is a live show. So if you have a question, go ahead and throw any question in the chat. I will check it periodically throughout the show. If it's something I can answer, I'll answer it right on the show. If not, I'll do the research on the back end and make sure I get answers to you towards the end of the show. It would help us if you would, if you're on YouTube, hit the like and the subscribe button. If you're on Facebook, hit the little thumbs up. That always helps us keep this show going. I talked about 2 events that were going to happen. One of them actually happened right after last week's show, and it was college night. And then the other one is our lighting of the oak tree. And I kind of want to recap those so you understand what it is that we do and how we have worked with the community members and the businesses to make both of those events better and safer, which is really my biggest concern. So with college night, if you're ever down there, it is the night before Thanksgiving downtown. And so what happens is all the college kids come back, they hang out downtown, and it's actually a good event. There's lots of smiles, lots of happy people. 10 years ago or so, we'd have some violence there. We'd have a lot of fights and a lot of problems, a lot of over-serving, just really behavior that was leading to problems for us, drunk driving, fights, those things. To curb that, we brought ABC out. We brought a lot more police officers out. We worked with the businesses, explained what the rules are, how we can help make it successful for them, because we want them to thrive down there. We want them to do very well. And what I'm happy to say is now we go down there and it's, from a law enforcement standpoint, it's pretty uneventful. We'll get a lot of people. You can see there's a lot of people on the patio, on the sidewalk. But if you look in the lower left there, you'll actually see that's a security guard hired by one of our businesses that knew they were going to have an influx of people. And so they were well prepared to card people as they were coming in. And we saw them turning people away. We saw them collecting fake IDs. And they just did a great job. So our kudos to our business community, because they were doing a fantastic job. And we, the police department, and then we, the community, benefit when they do their job very, very well. And it looked like they were doing great business down there. So they did a fantastic job. Then everybody went home. We enjoyed Thanksgiving. And then the very next night is our annual tree lighting, where we go down and we light the big oak tree. There's carolers, there's a lot of stuff. And there's a lot that goes into preparing that event for us as well. First, I think we dole out about 800 packs of hot chocolate. So 800 hot chocolate cups were delivered on behalf of the town to help people join the Christmas spirit. We helped celebrate one of our new businesses that opened up. It's the olive oil business down on Hearts and Prospect. And you can see in the upper right, that's a photo of us doing some mission planning. So that's where we bring our volunteers. Cops, as predicted, they're sitting in the back of the room. but that's where we all go and we brief and we hand out our assignments to make sure that we've got it locked down and prepared to make sure that the event is safe. And then the event is it's a really good event. So we're out there, we're engaging with kids, we're engaging with the adults, and we're just having a good time. So you can see we've got some kiddos in the upper left there, really good kids, asked a lot of good questions. But I do have to give some credit to the two boys in the upper right picture. They cornered Lieutenant Ingracia, and I think they asked him combined about 40 or 50 questions. Lower left, you can see that's Jason down by the Danville Hotel. And that's to illustrate that prior to the event, while it's still daylight, there is a lot going on as far as making sure that we're walking up and down the street, making sure that there's no suspicious activity, no packages left behind. There is a lot that goes into both planning, preparation, and the execution of an event like this so that we can make sure that that event is safe. And then the lower right, that's our famous Captain Chris Sherry of the CHP Dublin area that oversees a good portion of Danville. And he was supporting the Danville Police Department by wearing our badge that day. So kudos to Captain Chris Sherry, and thanks for joining in. So let me check the chat. It looks like there's some stuff going on in the chat here. So I want to see if I am getting this. Looks like Laurel says lots of excitement at Sycamore and San Ramon Valley. Lou says excitement, and then Lou says a PD chase through town onto 680. And okay, so I'll address that first. So as far as the excitement, there was a pursuit. One of our local agencies actually pursued a car into town. And then when we went to go help assist, the person actually stole another car and we chased them out of town. And frankly, I was going to actually cover pursuits later on in the show, but we'll cover them now. Last week, at the very beginning of the week and at the very end of the week, we had two pursuits. One of them was for a stolen car. Another one was a felony wanted vehicle. And as happens a lot, and we don't cover every pursuit on the show, but they're all listed on our blotter. They're all publicly available weekly on the blotter that we post on our website and on communitycrimemaps.com. But I wanted to highlight them because both, frankly, showed that the pursuits last week, at least, that when the pursuit rises to a level where it's too hazardous, we terminate the pursuit. So we train our officers to figure and think about several factors: speeds of the pursuit, time of day, location, downtown. If there's some concerning issues, if there's radio problems, the level of foot traffic, all of these things get dumped into the decision-making matrix. And then we balance it out. You know, do we know who this person already is? Can we catch them later in some other way? Is there a way to use some sort of technology to catch them? So we take all of that into consideration on whether or not to continue with or terminate a pursuit. And we do terminate, it seems like, I want to say back in 2018 or 19, we did a study just locally in Danville. We don't have very many pursuits here, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 50, 60% are terminated by the officer. All right. All right. So Chris Sherry saying stuff the cruiser. So good to see that Chris is watching live during the show. That's great. Gary Spinella says, love the Camino Taos Sycamore red light fine sign that was installed today. I hope we install the same at Camino Taos and Crow Canyon and enforcing it. Thank you. So we are going to talk a little bit about enforcement. It's not quite on the Camino Taos area, although there is enforcement still taking place there. It's on the El Capitan area. All right. So we'll move right into the blotter. So if we look at the blotter, this is the first time I can recall that there were two incidents at one location. So I wanted to spotlight that. If you look on communitycrimemaps.com and there is a number in a square, that just means that there's two events that took place at the same location. And if you click on it, it'll actually expand it out to the right and show you the details for both of those incidents. And those were at the Verizon store, and I'll cover them as we go through. But all in all, we had one robbery, we had 5 thefts, and we had 1 vehicle theft. On November 21st, one of our busier days, we had a stolen phone charger from the Verizon store on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. That was one of the two at the same location. On the 21st, later in the day, we had an armed robbery at the Chase Bank at the ATM in the livery. On the 21st, we also had a catalytic converter theft on Cantata Circle, and the vehicle that was targeted was a Prius. And very few cars are having their catalytic converters stolen other than Prius. It seems like the majority are Prius. Moving on to the 23rd, there was a theft of an unlocked wallet reported on El Pinto. And on the 25th, we had a golf cart that was stolen from Oak Court. And I know it sounds silly when we talk about stolen vehicles and everybody thinks it's their Prius or their Tesla or their Camaro that's parked out front, but a golf cart and a moped, if it's licensed, or a golf cart will count as that as well. On the 25th, we had a theft of 2 cell phones from the Verizon store. So that was the second time that location was a target for theft. And then on the 26th, we had tequila, lots of bottles of tequila that were stolen from the Bevmo on Diablo Road. So that is the update there, but I do want to cover the details again of the robbery that it took place at the ATM. And so on Monday, November 21st at 10:19 p.m., so this is later in the day, in the evening, and this happened at the Chase Bank on 661 San Ramon Valley Boulevard. That's inside the Livery Shopping Center. Victim withdrew cash that was demanded by the robber, and the suspect threatened to have a gun, didn't show the gun, but threatened it, and then ultimately fled on foot. So our officers, and what I'll do is, in our final thought, I'm actually going to cover a little bit more detail on how we release information. I know we've talked about it before as it's relates to other topics, but I want to make sure I kind of tie that in as it takes place with this robbery. So to traffic, we had no reported traffic accidents, and these are accidents where officers actually took the report. In our annual report every year, I'll report 2 traffic collision numbers. They track by percentage the same, but essentially one is the ones where we actually take a report, and the other number, the higher number, which is what we count as our accident rate, is those that are simply reported to the police, whether or not we take a report. Typically, if it's a non-injury collision and people are exchanging information, we don't write reports. If there's a dispute, if there is a hit and run, a DUI, so if there's a crime associated with the accident, we'll take a report. Or if there's an injury, we'll take the report on those. So I want to give you an example. So last week, we had no reported injuries where officers actually wrote the report, but we did have minor collisions that resulted in parties exchanging information. And you can see I circled them in on this map here. So along 680, not on 680, because that would be CHP, but along the 680 corridor, and then one inside the Crow Canyon Country Club there. So we do get minor fender benders that result in people exchanging information, but it's not anything that we necessarily report on this show. Sue said she heard lots of sirens. Sue, that's pretty accurate. When there's a pursuit, you're probably going to hear cops coming from all over. Chris can probably back me up on this one here in the chat, but a lot of times a cop can tell if it's a pursuit or police related, or if it's fire ambulance, because of how the sirens are moving around. It just sounds a little bit different when cops are chasing somebody versus a fire truck or an ambulance going from point A to point B. So I thought it was important. I gave the robbery update. This is the second time I've given it. And I want to cover how we release information. And then I want to roll right into the 4 robbery updates. And I'll cover all those 4. And I think they're all good illustrations on the timing of how we solve cases and then how we report those out to the public. So initially, we'll have an initial report. This is where the crime is reported to the police. If we put something out based on the crime type, then you'll see that we'll put out a general description as to what happened, and if there's a call to action. So community warning. Hey, you'll see in some of these there were watches that were stolen. So we let people know that the watches were stolen, and to be aware of their surroundings and maybe think about where they're going and what they're wearing and what that might present to a suspect. And then if there's information that we have where we maybe want to show a picture and we're asking for your help, then that would be the stage that we would do that. And when we put this information out there, I want to reiterate, we are never victim shaming. The fault or the cause or the responsibility of these crimes rests 100% on the person committing the crime. We should be free to drive our cars where we want. We should be free to leave them unlocked, leave our wallet out. We should be free to leave our front door unlocked, all of those things. What we do here, though, is we're not shaming the victim. We're simply telling you what happened, and then we're providing you crime tips on how you can help prevent from being a victim. And so when we're talking about residential burglaries, if there's a lot of residential burglaries out there, in that initial stage, or as we're putting information out, we might tell you motion lights, cameras, how to answer the door if you see someone maybe phoning in suspicious activity, those sort of things, maybe getting a community meeting together and whatnot. So after that initial push, unless there's a need to put information out, we're probably not going to put it out. And this is where you're going to see the investigation take over. It's very resource intensive. Officers and detectives work very, very hard. We'll work with other agencies. It's very important that we keep the investigation close and that we don't release information. And this is because this is the most important thing we do is we're working on behalf of the victim. We were at recess with the cops a couple days ago, and we were telling the kids, it's everyone's responsibility to keep the town safe. It's just the law enforcement, it's the police, it's the officers, the detectives' responsibility to be there full time and have the technical expertise to go out and do that on behalf of the victim. So we're going to give a lot more information to our victims, but we're usually not releasing that information out to the public. And then what you may see is at the end of an investigation, once it is complete, once it is closed, we may let the public know if there is a need that there was prosecution in the case, that charges were filed. What we have to be careful to do is we're not doing a documentary. We're not given a play-by-play as to what happened. And the reason we don't do that is we can't be seen as playing out a case in the public. There is a venue for that, and it's court. And we don't want to be seen as doing anything that's going to harm that case, because now if our role is to advocate and work on behalf of these victims, we're now not doing that if we're putting that information out in the venue that is inappropriate. All right, so let's give some updates, and I'm going to take them actually in semi-chronological order. I'm going to do the 3 Rolex robberies. That's what we've been calling them, but they're watch robberies. And then I'll cover the other ones. But these are all information updates that you've seen before. The robbery on Hartford took place on June 21st. If you can recall on that one, we issued a nixle as it happened and asked people to avoid the area. So a nixle alert would have sent alert to those who have opted in to avoid the area, and it would have sent it right to their text message and their email. And then we put out the general description of what happened, no reported injuries, and that the suspects were outstanding and that we were still working on it. Well, one of our officers worked very, very hard on this, worked in coordination with several agencies, with detectives at our department, and by August 21st was able to get a filing on several of the suspects in that case. Just actually did a phenomenal job. And just because the case was filed on August 21st, it doesn't mean the investigation stopped. That just simply means that's when we had enough information to file the case on some of the suspects in that case. You have to think that when we're in that investigation stage, there's a lot of search warrants that may be getting written for phone records for homes. There could be DNA that's getting processed, and we're waiting for lab results to come back. And then we identify more people and we make arrests, and then we search their phone records. So there's a lot of things that happen that just take an intense amount of work effort, but also just time in waiting for those responses. So on our second one, that was if you remember, that was the Trader Joe's one that happened right in the Trader Joe's parking lot on July 1st. The victim was held up at gunpoint. And this one, we had a lot of help from the sheriff's detectives. They came down immediately, and they responded to a location where they believe the suspects may be. Our sheriff's helicopter, the Star helicopter, helped search for the suspects. And ultimately, we were able to locate the suspects, arrest them, and get charges filed on all of them. The crime happened on July 1st, and all charges were filed on July 19th. So you can see, even in one that happened so rapidly, sometimes we don't finish it for a couple of weeks, but we were able to keep them, most of them, in custody. All right, on the armed robbery at the Livery. So this is the Livery Shopping Center. This one occurred on August 6th and was filed on August 17th. And this is where 3 armed suspects stole a watch from the victims. One bystander was struck by the pistol, and one of the suspects fired a round, striking no one. And so you can imagine that's a very, very violent encounter. And so our officers worked hard and our detectives worked hard, and we worked in coordination with other agencies, and we were able to get that one solved. But what we put out was the initial information, and then our detectives and officers ran with it from there. Now I'm going to highlight one, and I've highlighted this, I think, a few months ago. It was our lead detective's case, and she just did a phenomenal job on it. But it was a robbery of 3 teenagers, and this was inside or near the, it was on the, over by the high school, by downtown, and the victims were robbed at what they perceived was gunpoint, and the person fled to a location where there were cameras, and we got some grainy pictures, the ones on the right. And then we continued to search and worked towards identifying that very specific vehicle. The detective did a lot of great job in working that case and following up and interviewing victims and leads and suspects, and ultimately was able to get charges filed. And that those dates are actually wrong because it was August 6th of 2021. I have the wrong date all the way down. So it was October 16th of 2021, and we ended up filing charges July 28th of this year. So many, many months later, that case was filed. And so you can see that they're not all filed overnight. It's not, I think Law and Order has really set a high bar for police in the thought that you can get the case, have it reported, investigated, the person arrested, prosecuted, convicted in 42 minutes. I mean, that is an amazing timeline. And so we're just not that fast. Sometimes we're pretty quick, but we're not quite that fast. All right. I'm going to check the chat here real quick. Lots of cones put out on Diablo. I think, Sue, and I'm going to apologize. Sue, thank you for chiming in on that. So Sue put in lots of cones put on Diablo, and that was for the tree lighting. I completely forgot, and I did not get that nixle out. That's the notification saying, hey, the roads are closed. Avoid the area unless you're attending the event. And so Sue, I'm going to apologize to you. We did have a lot of cones. Usually what we do is we have some vehicles that can come through and go to the apartments on Diablo near the oak tree, but everybody else we turn around. We do have signs up and whatnot, but we should have put the nixle out. So Sue, I apologize for that. So Gary says, great job, and we thank you. Any connection between these crimes? And Gary, what I'll say is there does not appear to be. These were independent groups. Laurel says, see you at RMA tomorrow. I will see you there. And all right, so we're going to move on. That is what I have for that. So if you can remember, for the last like 3 or 4 weeks, we've been talking about speeding in one specific area because someone jumped in the chat and said, hey, we're getting a lot of speeding on El Capitan day and afternoon, and it is a problem. And so one of the things that we do is we look at the complaints, we look at where accidents are occurring, but we do want to make sure that we're taking in all of that information so that we can do the enforcement and then maybe even recommend engineering solutions if needed. So we did have that speeding complaint. That is a speed sign that we put up. We put that speed sign up, and while that speed sign was up, then we looked at our accident data. So this was the reported collisions from January 1st, 2022, so the beginning of the year, all the way through last week. Now, if you look, I circled it. El Capitan, no accidents, right? We had one on a connector street, but you could pretty much put a bubble around Osage and say that is very, very safe for vehicles because we have had no collisions in that area along El Capitan, Orange Blossom, Paraiso, Greenbrook, surrounding the school. That's actually pretty amazing. If you look at it, it's almost like a force field. All right, so we look at the data. So just because the data is saying no accidents, it doesn't mean that the complaint is not legitimate. So we need to look into it. We may send volunteers down there with a radar gun to do spot checks. We may send officers down there to do spot checks, and we may put up something like that speed sign. And if you recall, we put the speed sign up, and it absolutely said over a 2-week period of time that there was speeding. The speed limit is 25. You can see there's a fair share at the 26 to 30, 31 to 35, and then it drops off quite a bit above 35. And those ones at 41, 51, 55, those are single digit counts. So we had that. And then we want to look at when is this occurring? And I have to be honest, if I took a wild guess, I would have said it would have been more towards the morning. But if you look, the yellow box represents the first level of speeding. That's 26 to 35 miles an hour. I guess I should put it up. The red box represents the second tier of speeding, which is 36 to 41 miles an hour. And what I did was I highlighted in that orange or that red square or rectangle, the area where we were seeing the most amount of violators. And what this allows us to do is concentrate our enforcement during those times. And if you look, there's at 36 to 40 miles an hour, there's 12 people at 1 o'clock, 13 in the 2 o'clock hour, 12 at the 3 o'clock hour, 8 at the 6. So a pretty good pattern of people speeding during those PM hours. So we knew that we needed to work enforcement during that time. So then I go to our motors, I go to our traffic officers, I go to our beat officers that work that area, and I said, hey, we need to step up the enforcement there. Let me dispel the rumor. There is no ticket quota. When our officers go out and they do enforcement, the goal is simply to get a behavior change. And we leave it up to the officer and their discretion on what enforcement tactic they want to use. If they want to give warnings, give warnings. If you want to give a written warning, give a written warning. And if you think a citation is needed in order to change behavior, by all means, give the citation. But we don't set quotas. One of the things that you'll see is like, let's say if they were speeding on Camino Tasajara or Sycamore, it may not be efficient for us to work Camino Tasajara or Sycamore. Maybe we're going to work Crow Canyon Road, or maybe we'll work Greenbrook, or maybe we'll work Old Camino Tas as it comes into the Camino Tas and Sycamore corridor. So we may work connecting streets. Likewise, if they're speeding in an area, we may work that area, but we may find it more efficient to work a different violation. So you may see us like at a stop sign. And so maybe we're working a stop sign knowing that the person speeding is most probably also going to work and run that stop sign, but we can be in a better position to actually view and watch that stop sign in that area. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to put up this map real quick. And so this is going to show the number of stops on the El Capitan area from November 7th through the 29th. And if you can look, a lot of them have multiple numbers on there. But this is not a total count of tickets written. It's a total count of stops. The tickets written just on the El Capitan section, that would be between Delta Way and about Greenbrook. So it doesn't include those near there, is about 15. So there have been quite a few citations written during that time. So that is what we do. And while our officers are out there, if they notice something that needs an engineering solution, maybe the signs aren't right. I mean, it could be something as simple as the speed sign has got ivy growing over it and needs to be cut back, or a crosswalk ahead sign is covered. Maybe we trim the trees back there. Maybe it's something that needs additional engineering. We'll go over to our transportation manager and collaborate with them. In fact, we had a meeting earlier today with them about a parking issue, and we'll work with them to come up with engineering solutions to these problems. So we do continue to work, and this is not a singular example. This doesn't live in a vacuum. This is happening all over the town in lots of areas. So this is just one that was good to highlight because it was brought about through a complaint or a concern that came out in the show itself here. Sue says, sit in front of my house. I think there's a lot of people that have offered up their driveways from time to time for us to sit in front of their homes. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see if there's any other spots. I don't see any other. So we'll give a couple reminders out again. We do have our Fill the Cruiser event coming up. That is this Friday at Costco, 10 to 2. So we'll be there for quite a while. We'll have a U-Haul truck. Last year, we were able to fill up a U-Haul, which was pretty darn amazing. So come out there and join us Friday, December 2nd, 10 to 2. And if you just want to hang out and engage, cup of coffee, we're going to be out at the Starbucks on Camino Ramon. That's at the Rose Garden Shopping Center. And we'll be there Thursday, December 15th from 9 to 10. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the show. And if you can, just hit the like, subscribe, maybe the thumbs up, any one of those little buttons that helps us keep the lights on for this show. All right. Thank you. And we're 10-10, but we're always 10-8 and in service. Have a good night.